Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is now controlling the daily number of vessels permitted to transit the Strait of Hormuz, a direct pressure lever timed to ongoing U.S.-Iran nuclear negotiations. According to a Farsi language outlet affiliated with IranWire, citing an IRGC-linked military source, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy is now authorizing only a fixed and daily adjusted number of vessels to transit the Strait of Hormuz. That number, the source states, will shift based on changing conditions, giving Tehran a dynamic and immediate lever over global energy flows. Simultaneously, President Trump posted on social media that approximately 19 million barrels of oil passed through the strait on a single day, calling it a, quote, historic record, while claiming oil prices are falling and the world is now, quote, safer. The two narratives are in direct tension. This report remains single-sourced and unverified by independent outlets, but the strategic timing, amid active U.S.-Iran nuclear negotiations, makes it a development to watch closely. Telegram channel Leb Update reports that an Israeli drone struck a parked vehicle on the outskirts of Brachit toward Beit Yahun in southern Lebanon. No casualty details were provided in the available reporting. The strike signals continued Israeli kinetic operations in the south, despite ongoing ceasefire and diplomatic discussions. Open-source analysts note that persistent Israeli strike activity in southern Lebanon risks undermining any diplomatic progress and raises the escalation ceiling in the already volatile Israel-Lebanon theater. This report is single-sourced and casualty figures remain unconfirmed. Telegram channel Supernova Plus reports that a fuel depot belonging to a company identified as TES in Kerch, Crimea, was destroyed, with 4 storage reservoirs hit. No attribution, casualty figures, or strike method were specified in the available reporting, and these details remain unverified. Kerch is a strategically significant logistics node connecting Crimea to the Russian mainland. Open-source analysts assess that strikes on fuel infrastructure at Kerch degrade Russian military logistics capacity in the peninsula and demonstrate that Ukrainian long-range strike capability against Crimea remains active. Russian Supreme Command messaging, relayed by Telegram channel 2 Majors, states that Russia is, quote, consistently modernizing its nuclear triad and other military forces. The messaging adds that more than 1,000 models of weapons and equipment were combat tested last year, and frames Western statements about preparing for war with Russia as, quote, false claims used to justify Western militarization. Russia reiterates readiness to respond to all external and internal threats and advocates for a multipolar security architecture. This is deliberate public signaling rather than operational reporting. Open-source analysts treat such messaging as a calibrated deterrence communication directed at NATO audiences amid elevated tensions. Reporting aggregated by Telegram channel Geo Grandmasters, citing media reports, details that German insurance giant Allianz and its California-based subsidiary PIMCO held approximately $2.67 billion in Israeli government bonds by September 2025, representing 51.8% of all non-Israeli foreign holdings at that point. Total foreign holdings reportedly grew from $1.16 billion in November 2024 to at least $4.91 billion by March 2026. Israeli war-era bonds carry an average yield of 5.56%, compared with 1.4% before the conflict, attracting yield-seeking investors even as all 3 major credit rating agencies, Moody's, S&P, and Fitch, have downgraded Israel's rating. The U.S. and Germany together account for 90.7% of all foreign holdings. These figures are drawn from a single, aggregated Telegram source and should be treated as unverified pending independent confirmation. Al Jazeera reports that Kenya's government confirmed construction of a U.S.-funded Ebola research facility has been halted following a court order. The project, valued at $13.5 million, faced public outcry over perceived health risks and concerns about transparency. The halt represents a setback for U.S. health security infrastructure in East Africa and, according to Al Jazeera, signals growing local resistance to U.S.-backed biosecurity programs on the continent. Strategic assessment. First, the economic picture. The IRGC's reported daily management of Strait of Hormuz transits is the most consequential economic variable in today's digest. Approximately 20% of global oil supply moves through that choke point. Even the credible threat of dynamic transit limits, single-sourced as this report remains, is sufficient to inject a risk premium into crude prices. Trump's claim of record oil flows and falling prices reflects a competing narrative, but if IRGC controls are real and tighten, open-source analysts assess that markets would reprice energy risk rapidly. Separately, the scale of Western capital flowing into high-yield Israeli war bonds, with Allianz and PIMCO holding over $2.6 billion, embeds Western financial institutions more deeply in conflict economy risk, inviting regulatory and political scrutiny, particularly in Europe. On political stability, Iran's transit signaling arrives at a delicate moment in U.S.-Iran nuclear diplomacy, where each side is managing domestic constituencies as much as each other. Hardliners in Tehran benefit from demonstrating leverage. The Trump administration benefits from claiming oil abundance and stability. Both narratives can coexist in the short term, but a breakdown in talks would sharply change the calculus. In Lebanon, continued Israeli strikes risk destabilizing the fragile political environment and undermining any ceasefire architecture. Russia's nuclear triad messaging, relayed through state-aligned telegram channels, is directed at domestic audiences as much as Western ones, reinforcing the Kremlin's legitimacy narrative amid a prolonged war economy, and the wider geopolitical consequences. The convergence of IRGC-Hormuz signaling and active Israeli operations in Lebanon suggests the Middle East's multiple pressure points remain tightly coupled. A collapse of U.S.-Iran nuclear talks could rapidly translate into Hormuz restrictions becoming operational rather than rhetorical, with immediate second-order effects on Gulf state stability and Asian energy importers. The Kerch fuel depot strike, if confirmed, shows Ukraine maintaining strategic pressure on Crimean logistics despite frontline attritional dynamics. Russia's nuclear triad messaging raises the deterrence temperature with NATO, just as European defense spending debates intensify. In the next 7 to 14 days, watch for a formal response from Iran's negotiating team on Hormuz, Israeli government statements on ceasefire compliance in southern Lebanon, and any NATO reaction to Russia's public nuclear signaling. The Strait of Hormuz remains the single most watched choke point in global energy security this week. If you follow these intelligence briefs regularly, consider subscribing so you never miss the next update. This brief is based on publicly available open-source information and is for educational and analytical purposes only.